To make this video a little bit shorter, I've went ahead and cut my fabrics and decided to make a PDF that you can print out that tells you how to cut the fat quarters. I also will include how much to cut for just one block, because this is a really large block at 16.5 inches unfinished. I think it would make a great little candle mat or table topper for the middle of a small table. So I'll put the cutting instructions for just one block. But for a 9-block quilt, you're going to need 9 different fat quarters to make the scallops. And for my quilt, I've chosen 3 green, 3 black, and 3 red. Then the centers, there's 2 different centers. They're exactly the same. They're just in 2 different colorways. So this grouping, you're going to need 2 fat quarters of brown and 2 tans or gold. Now you could actually cut these from a fat 1/8, and this one you could cut from a 10-inch square. For the 5 blocks with the centers in this colorway, you're going to need to cut from 1 fat quarter, 10 2.5 by 8.5, 10 4.5 by 2.5. And then from one of your tan fabrics, you're going to need to cut 5 4.5 by 4.5. From the second brown fat quarter, you're going to need to cut 8 8.5 by 2.5, and 8 4.5 by 2.5. And then from your tan or gold colored fat quarter, fat 1/8 or 10-inch square, you're going to need to cut 4 4.5 by 4.5 inch squares. Okay, I've moved over to the sewing machine. I'm going to start sewing my center blocks together, and I'm going to move them over here. I like to set them like this at my sewing machine and just easily bring them together and send them through. I'm going to be chain piecing. Makes things a lot quicker. Pin those in after you get them lined up. Makes for more accurate piecing to put that pin in there, because those feed dogs like to stretch out your fabric on the bottom. That's why I always pin at least once, most of the time. I'm not going to say all the time. And I'm using a 1/4 inch seam, not a scant 1/4 inch, a true 1/4 inch seam. But you'll want to test out for your machine and see which way works best. You may need a scant because all fabrics are different. Some people starch, some people don't. So I always do a test piece, and I tested these, so I made sure that they were going to come out correctly. All right, and I'm just going to press these out. I'm going to press all of these frames out on the centers. Okay, I've got my blocks laid out how I want them as far as colorway. It goes black, red, green, black, green, black, red. And that's how I want them laid out in my quilt. So I'm just going to move this up here, out of the way. Okay, and I've got my center blocks. let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are my 5. And I know that I want them laid out like the dice. 1, so then I'm just going to take my pieces over here, my blocks, and set them on the centers that I want them to go with. Okay, now that I got my blocks all laid out, I want to number them because I don't want to get them out of order because I know that's happened to me before. So I've got these little alphabet things and number things that I've made. And I'll link to it on my blog. It's a free printable, but I've taken them and put them into a little needle thing, printed them out. You can go in and change the numbers and the letters if you want to, and you can also change the color if you want to. Link below, but I'm just going to take those and pin onto the block. That way I know where that one goes in the position of the quilt. All right, now that I have them all labeled, I'm going to pick them up in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm just going to work on them one at a time. I'm going to lay them out. Okay, I've got my first block laid out. There's 2 different styles of units in each block. We're going to have one where we put a square on each corner or on 2 corners this way. And we're going to sew a diagonal line here and a diagonal line here and flip those corners back. It's called flippy corners. But on these cornerstones, it's a little bit different. You want to put them diagonally across each other, like so. And another thing that you need to do is you can draw a line from corner to corner on all 216 of these squares, but I'm not going to do that since there's so many of them. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. This time, with there being so many of these little 2-inch squares, I'm going to use a line on the bed of my machine, and I'll show you that here in just a second. All right, so I've got my stack of background fabrics, and I'm just going to put them over here to the right. And I'm also going to change out my presser foot to a open toe foot. Makes it easier to see, but you don't have to do this if you're comfortable with just using your 1/4-inch foot or whatever. Do that. But I've put this tape on the bed of my machine. Now this is new to me. This is diagonal seam tape by Cluck Cluck Sew. I followed Cluck Cluck Sew for years. She has a wonderful blog, but it also has lines on it. It says a 1/4 inch, and it seems like a really nice tape. Typically I wouldn't buy something like this, but I found it on sale, kind of like a clearance thing, for $3, so I bought it. But you can just, if you don't want to buy tape, you can put a piece of tape on there, line it up with your needle, and just use the edge of your tape as a line. I have also done it this way, where I draw my own lines on a piece of tape and line it up with my needle. I would also put another one over here, but either way will work. So I've got my block over here, and we've got the different styles or different ways we're going to sew it on. So what I'm going to do is do all the same kind at once. I'll do the corners last, and I'll do these at the same time. That way I can just pick them all up, have them sitting beside me, and know that each one of them is exactly the same. Okay, so I've got my fabric over here and my blocks over here. So if you're drawing a diagonal line from corner to corner, you're going to want to stitch right on that line. But since I am not drawing a diagonal line, I'm going to put the corner of the background fabric right up against the needle, And I normally take a stitch or two into the fabric. That was 2. And then I look down here to make sure that I'm lined up with that center line. And now I'm just going to watch here and keep on stitching. Try and keep it lined up with that middle line as best as possible and stitch right off of that corner. Okay, I've cut those apart. I should have made sure that I stacked them up there nice and neat, but I did not. So I'm not going to cut those corners off just yet. I'm going to go ahead and sew the other side. So I've got my stack, and we've got that one that's already been sewn on, so we're just going to put one on the other corner and sew diagonally this way. Make sure it's coming down from the middle on both. Okay, if you're one of those people that like to save every little piece and work with mini quilts, mini piecing, you can sew a second seam. Just put your presser foot along the edge of the stitch that you just made or a little bit away from it and sew a diagonal, another diagonal line. And cut between the 2 sewn lines. I showed this on my last video, but just in case somebody hasn't watched my last video, I want to show them here. So you can make this teeny tiny little half square triangle. And let's see, this looks like this one's going to be trimmed up to about 1.25 inches. All right, 1.5 inches if you make a smaller seam, so 1.25 inches. You could make a little mini quilt. I think I'm going to pass on it this time, guys, and I'm just going to cut these off and use them to stuff my dog pillow. So you just cut 1/4 inch away or so from the diagonal lines. On the outside of the block. And I'm going to just show you an example. And on the left side, we're going to press out. And on the right side, we're going to press inward. Okay? On every one of them, we're going to press this one out and this one in toward the black. And what that's going to do is when we start sewing these together, that's going to allow us to nest our seams. That right there will nest together nice and tight. Let's show that again. These are both pressed that way, and then the 2 on the right are pressed towards the black. And you're going to do that on every block, even the corners. Okay, I've pulled all my corner pieces over here, and the corner pieces are just a little bit different. It's just that you're going to have a corner piece, or you're going to have a square on each end. So I went ahead and laid them on there, and I'm going to show you how to do this real quick. You're just doing the same thing, sewing diagonal corner or a diagonal seam from corner to corner. And I'm just going to swing it around and sew the other one. Again, we're going to cut off the outside. Okay, remember the seam on the right, we pressed inward. Okay, let me show you again. Let me get this out of the way. So this is our block because it's going to fit in this corner right here. Okay, so this is the right. We're going to press it under towards the black, and this one we're going to press out. All right, then we're just going to stick it in the corner. Oh, I did that backwards, didn't I? I sure did. So let's flip it like this. There we go. And I'm going to take this and put it over here. That means it should fit right there, and it does. Now what I'm going to do right now is sew these two together and these two together, and then we'll sew them to the center. We're going to nest up those seams right here. Make sure that these seams match up. You can pull it back and look in there, and those are matching up perfectly. They're nice and nested. And as always, I'm going to pin at the very end as well. Okay, I'm going to press these out either direction. It doesn't really matter because that seam is just going to be falling in the middle of nothing. Okay, I got those two done, so I'm just going to turn them in and sew it. Okay, I've got both of those sewn on, and I pressed the seams out. I'll turn that over so you can see it. The seams are pressed outward like that. And now I'm going to sew these two rows together. Both this piece and that piece were both sewn the same. The center seam, it doesn't matter which way you press it. I pressed mine to the right. These two seams need to be pressed inward. That way they'll nest with the middle. I'm just going to sew both of those on there. All right, there she is, all finished. I sewed the top and the bottom on, and I pressed both of those out towards the top. And don't forget that there's a PDF in the description box below that you can print out. There will also be information right here on how to make just one block, because I think it would make a really cute candle mat. And I've got a question for you guys. I had a request for these boards. This is a pressing board. And somebody wanted to know how I make my pressing boards. So if you would like to know how to make these pressing boards, let me know and I will work on a video. Just drop me a comment down below. Okay guys, that's it. Thanks for stopping by my little spot in Podunk. Do me a favor and hit that little like button, hit the subscribe and the bell. That way you never miss a thing. That little like button helps me out more than you know. It allows me to keep doing what I'm doing and bringing you new patterns as often as I can. I'll see you in a few days. Bye-bye. I love you.